Good afternoon, children. In my previous video, we started with our new lesson, Absorption by Roots, the processes involved. This chapter for us from the beginning is lesson number 5, and while uploading the video, I realized the things were not very clear. At places, the video is very blurred. So today, I am going to make again a new start to the topic once again, which I am very sure those who have followed will certainly revise, but those who haven't been able to understand, it's definitely for you children. Alright, so let us begin. The topic begins with roots, their functions, and the need of roots as their efficient absorbing structures. Roots, children, we know they carry on very important functions for the fixation of plant and providing support. Apart from it, they also absorb water and mineral nutrients. Alright. Now, what is the need of the absorbed water and minerals? Let us do one by one. First, let us see the importance of water in the plants. Water is a very important constituent of protoplasm. That is the base of life. Alright. It is required for the process of photosynthesis. It is used in the green leaves as one of the raw materials for the synthesis of glucose. Second, water is also required in a very large quantity to be evaporated as water vapor during transpiration for the purpose of cooling and producing a suction force which sustains the absorptive column of water. The third is transportation. Water is also required for the transportation of substances in the form of solution from the roots upward into the shoot to the leaves or other parts. Then the fourth important function is mechanical stiffness. Water provides turgidity or a fully distended tight condition of the cell, which is very important for the stiffness of plant tissues. So children, we saw that roots are certainly very, very important in this part. And what is the role of this absorbed water? Let us move further with the importance of the minerals absorbed. That why are these minerals important? Minerals are absorbed by the roots in two forms. The first is they are absorbed as salts, right? And the second is that they are simply absorbed as ions, that is charged atoms. As salts, we can talk about nitrates, phosphates, sulfates, etc. And in the form of ions, we'll certainly discuss about K+, calcium 2+, magnesium, chloride ions, etc. Now, they all by and large are very, very important as constituents of cell wall. We know what cell wall is and various cell organelles in their function. Secondly, these minerals are very important for the synthesis. Synthesis means production or manufacture of compounds and enzymes. Alright, enzymes, children, we also call them as biocatalyst. Moving next is characteristics of roots for absorbing water. Just now we discussed roots, what function they carry out. Then what happens as the water is absorbed, what is the requirement of that water. Then what is the role of the minerals absorbed? Now let us see what makes the roots so very efficient absorbing structures, right? There are 3 points to discuss. Roots have a surface area which is enormous. Let me show you this. In your textbook, it is page number 36. This is what the root hairs, you can see, various rootlets and the root hairs, right? So this bunch of rootlets, when carefully examined, they will show hundreds of root hairs, right? And if they were laid end to end, children, they will be surprisingly covering some many kilometers. So you can imagine what vast area do the roots occupy, right? And that makes them very efficient absorbing structures. The second is root hairs have cell sap of higher concentration. What is cell sap? Cell sap is a mixture of minerals and water absorbed, and this is contained in the vacuole of a cell, right? Vacuole, let me show you a root hair, something like this. This is a typical root hair, and if you can see, there are many vacuoles inside. Look at these, this is such a big vacuole, and this vacuole contains what you call as cell sap. So this cell sap is of a very high concentration. High concentration means less water and more of the solutes, forming a viscous structure or composition of the solution. So due to this higher concentration, surrounding water, which is more, starts entering the root hair, right? So this is another second characteristic, that root hairs have cell sap of higher concentration that makes them efficient to absorb water. Third is root hairs have thin walls, right? The root cell wall is thin and permeable, and it allows the movement of water molecules and dissolved substances freely in and out. Also, let's talk about the cell membrane. If you see this diagram, children, you will see that the outermost structure is the cell wall. I'd say this is thin and very permeable. But inner to this, if you see the cell membrane, this is also very thin and semi-permeable. Semi-permeable means it allows water to pass through but will not allow the other substances or dissolved salts, alright, which are very large. That means if it is an assembly of some small to large molecules, then semi-permeable, the inner membrane allows the small ones but will not allow the larger molecules. That is why we call it as selectively permeable, because it selects the substances according to the pore size of the cell membrane. So these were the three main characteristics which are definitely very important for making roots as their efficient absorbing structures. Now moving next, if we talk about various phenomena that are involved in absorbing water and minerals, there are 5 of them which are very important. The first is imbibition. Let's talk one by one. Imbibition is the first phenomenon here. What is imbibition? By definition, if we talk, it is absorption of let's say water by living or dead plant cells by surface attraction. Let's try to understand this simply. Now, suppose there are substances made up of cellulose, for example, doors, wooden doors, etc., or something that is proteinaceous like seeds, right? If you keep them into water or in let's say doors, if they're exposed to humidity during monsoon, what happens? The doors swell up. Or if the seeds are dipped into water, they will swell up. Why this happens is because these substances are hydrophilic in nature. Hydro means water and phili means an affinity or likeness for. They will immediately absorb water, right, due to surface attraction, and they will swell up. So due to this swelling up, what will happen? The seeds, if they are absorbing the proteins of seed, the seed coat will rupture and germination will begin, right? But if you talk of something like this, in wooden doors, in rainy seasons, we have experienced that we have a problem while closing the wardrobe doors, etc., or the wooden doors, they don't close properly. It's the same thing because of imbibition. You can see here, if we compare it, there are 2 words, children, absorption and adsorption. So suppose this is a ball of mud and is immersed into water. Water is entering everywhere to even the center of the mud ball here. Then this becomes wet inside. This is total absorption. But surface attraction means only the outer structure of the ball is wet, but the inner is still dry. So this is kind of incomplete adsorption or surface adsorption. We call it not ab but adsorption. So this alphabet B and D, they have a difference amongst them. Alright. So imbibition is a surface phenomenon like this. Then the next phenomenon is diffusion. Definition of imbibition we have already discussed, that it is a process by which living or dead plant cells absorb water by surface attraction. Moving to diffusion. See a very simple example. This is a beaker made of glass containing water, and some crystals are dropped into one corner. Let's say it could be some dye or potassium permanganate or any colored agent, right? And if you leave the water undisturbed, if you're not stirring the liquid, what will happen? The color starts diffusing to larger area till it covers the entire water. All right. So this movement, diffusion, is free movement of molecules of substance, solute or solvent, gas or liquid, from the region of higher concentration to the region of their lower concentration when the two are in direct contact. Remember children, diffusion, you have to understand, it is the movement of molecules of solid, liquid or gas. That is all three states of matter, right? And from where to where? From an area which is more to an area which is less. Remember, the areas which are more can only be the donors. Suppose it's a money in society, the rich can give to the poor, or if it is knowledge, the knowledgeable people like teachers etc. can impart it to those who have lesser knowledge like other people etc. Right? So in this case, when we talk of molecules also, you have to remember only the areas which are more can give it to less. Vice versa, it's not possible, right? Beggars can't give it to the rich men or money, right? Or if we talk of the same knowledge, those who do not have knowledge cannot give it to the ones who already have it, right? So same thing is with the diffusion. But another process, if we talk about, let's say osmosis, how it is different from diffusion. Osmosis is movement of water molecules from their region of higher concentration, same thing like diffusion, higher, to the region of lower concentration. But you must be wondering, then what is the difference? The difference is, number one, diffusion here takes place in all states of matter, solid, liquid and gas. But here diffusion takes place only and only in liquid. It does not take place in solid, it does not take place in gas. The osmosis process is taking place only in liquid, whereas diffusion was taking place in all. Then osmosis, in liquid case, it will take place only and only in water. You know, there are many liquids, petrol or oil, milk, ether, water, etc. But here osmosis is effective only with water molecules, but from an area from more to an area of less through a semi-permeable membrane. SPM means semi-permeable membrane. Here there is no membrane, they are in direct contact. So children, there are two very important differences. Clarify these concepts before we move further. Number one, no semi-permeable membrane is here in diffusion, but osmosis, it's a must. Number two, here in diffusion, all three states of matter it occurs, solid, liquid, gas, but osmosis, solid it does not, gas it does not, liquid it only and only takes place with water molecules from an area of more to less. Osmosis is of two types. First is endosmosis, the second is exosmosis. Endosmosis is inward diffusion of water through SPM when surrounding solution is less concentrated. This causes swelling. See this diagram. For example, if we are going to dip some or immerse some raisins into water, the dry fruit raisins, you immerse into water for some time, overnight maybe, and what you observe in the morning is that they swell up. Now compare this. Here, which is the area of more water? Outside is more water, inside is less water. And I told you the semi-permeable membrane is there, there's the peel of the raisin, and water starts moving from area of more to less to an extent that it swells up. This is endosmosis because the water is moving inside the substance here. Then what is exosmosis? It's the outward diffusion of water through semi-permeable membrane when the surrounding is more concentrated. Here, inside was more concentrated, children. Outside was comparatively more dilute. Now look at this. Another situation, just reverse. These are fresh grapes immersed into concentrated sugar solution. Now let us see where is more water comparatively. Here, because the solution is concentrated, concentrated means more sugar and less water. So let us write L because it shows less water. Inside is more water, M, because these are fresh grapes. Osmosis, I told you, requires semi-permeable membrane. So this is the peel of the grape. And water moves from more to less. So this is water starts moving outside. After some time, 3 to 4 hours, what you see that they become shrunken. And this is what we call as flaccid. So this is exosmosis, that the water has been driven outside, right, by diffusion of water through SPM. When surrounding solution is more concentrated, it causes shrinkage. Then here I am going to give you a very important table, children. It's to be learnt by heart directly. Examples of different kinds of membranes. Impermeable means it does not allow movement of anything through it. For example, no water or no solute. For example, rubber sheet. Just the opposite. Freely permeable. This did not allow anything. Freely permeable means it will allow everything through it. Water molecules, solute molecules, everything to move easily. So such membranes we call as fully permeable or freely permeable or completely permeable. Example, muslin cloth, right, is one example. Then if we talk of another category here, then we have semi-permeable membrane or selectively permeable membrane. Selectively permeable membrane, we have some 6 examples to give. Cellophane paper, egg membrane, animal bladder, whisking bag, goat's bladder and pig's bladder. So this you have to understand, children. Learn it. All 6 membranes, they are semi-permeable or selectively permeable. Coming next to a fourth process here. Remember, children, we started our topic as the processes involved in absorbing of water. 3 processes we discussed. Imbibition, then we talked of diffusion, third was osmosis, coming to fourth is active transport. Alright, before we come to the fourth, I'll show you again a diagram here, this side. This is the diagram of a single fully grown root hair. Same diagram here, but I have colored it more so that you understand things clearly. Look at this diagram, children. Outermost limiting membrane is the cell wall. Second to it, inner to it, is cell membrane. There are large vacuoles which are characteristic of any plant cell, right? Then there's a nucleus, as you can see in each cell. This is one cell enlarged as a root hair. So this is enlargement of root hair. This is just the beginning of root hair, right? So you can see a nucleus in each cell. Then here what I am trying to tell you is comparatively try to understand where water is more and where it is less. This is soil outside, right? And this is a root hair. So the cell sap here is highly concentrated, I have told you. Highly concentrated means more of solutes and less of water. So water is less, see I have written it less, and outside is comparatively more water. And there is semi-permeable membrane. What is semi-permeable? The cell membrane, right? This is SPM. Now what happens? Osmosis begins to such, or let's say the movement of water molecules begin from an area of more to an area of less through semi-permeable membrane, right? Such an easy flow of water does not require any energy and we call it as active transport. So here we call it as active transport because in this no energy is used. Sorry, this is passive. I'm sorry, children. This is passive. Movement of water is passive. But coming to minerals. Now we'll talk of minerals. Inside there are comparatively more minerals. Why? Because the concentration is high. Outside minerals are less. Why? Because you are talking of a given area of soil only. So movement of minerals is going to be from less to more. Because remember, I agree that minerals are more inside. But does it mean that the minerals start moving from more to less? Or the roots start giving it to soil? No. Because in that case, the roots or the plants will die. So minerals are kind of forcibly taken up from an area of less to more, which is against the law of nature. And this forcible taking up is called as active transport. So this active transport, why we call it as active is because it uses energy in the form of ATP. So here passive was easy, passive transport, but only water was absorbed. Active transport, it's from less to more, but this involves expenditure of ATP as a form of energy. So that is active transport, children. Moving back here. Active transport is the passage of substances, ions or salt from lesser to higher concentration, which is opposite from diffusion. Obtaining energy from cell, I told you in the form of ATP, through a living cell membrane. Coming to the next, that is turgidity and plasmolysis. Turgidity, children, it means a state of cell in which it is rigid and in which the cell wall is rigid and stretched by an increase of volume of vacuoles due to absorption of water. The cell is said to be turgid. That is this state of cell, when it is fully distended with enough water inside, it will be called as turgid, right? Whereas just the opposite, this condition, it will be called as flaccid, right? Why it will be? Because in flaccid, the condition is when the cell content is shrunken and the cell is no more tight. The cell is said to be flaccid. So if I show you here in the textbook, children, the diagrams that are given for turgid and flaccid cells will be something like this. It's at page number 41. This is a turgid cell where enough water is being there. The solution is isotonic, we'll talk later, but this condition is a turgid cell. But look at this. The cell here, or we'll talk better here. This is the turgid cell, whereas this one, when the entire water has been drawn out from the vacuole to the outside, look at what happens to the cell membrane. This will be a flaccid cell because of the shrunken condition. Then, moving up to another term called plasmolysis. Plasmolysis is the contraction of cytoplasm from the cell wall due to withdrawal of water when placed in a strong hypertonic solution. The same thing we are talking, children. Try to see this. If you observe this, children, cell wall is at its own place. Cell wall is intact. But suppose this cell has been dipped in a strong concentrated solution. The cell membrane starts leaving the cell wall. See, the cell membrane has come here. This is the cell membrane. Whereas cell wall is rigid, it's at its own place. And look at the gap now between cell wall and the cell membrane. This huge gap, right? This state of the cell is called as a plasmolysed cell. And this process leading to this condition of contraction of cytoplasm from the cell wall due to withdrawal of water, and when it was placed only in a strong solution of sugar or salt, this condition is called as a plasmolysed cell and the process called plasmolysis, right? The reverse of plasmolysis, if we talk of a process called deplasmolysis, it is the reversal of plasmolysis. How this can happen? If a flaccid cell is placed into pure water, or if a cell like this, which has been plasmolysed, you dip it into pure water, again the cytoplasm kind of regrows. Again it will start changing like this. It will absorb water from more to less, and the cytoplasm starts spreading all throughout the inner space till it becomes in the normal form. So this reversal from this structure to here is called as deplasmolysis. So once again, plasmolysis is moving from here to this condition, whereas deplasmolysis is the opposite, coming back to the normal situation. So this is what you have to understand, children. Moving further, we have three types of pressure to understand. Turgor pressure we call as TP. The pressure of the cell contents on the cell wall is called Turgor pressure. Look at this, a fully distended condition. TP, look at the arrow, is the pressure of the cell contents on the cell wall. So the arrow is facing towards the wall. And just the opposite, look at this pressure. The wall is also exerting a pressure on the cell contents, and that's called as the wall pressure. So this is another one. Wall pressure is the pressure exerted by the cell wall on the cell contents. So this is the pressure is just the opposite in direction. Turgor pressure is towards the cell wall, facing outside, but wall pressure is from the wall to the contents inside. Direction is just opposite. What is osmotic pressure? Osmotic pressure is the minimum pressure required or that must be exerted to prevent passage of pure solvent in a solution when the two are separated by semi-permeable. To understand this, children, look at this diagram. It's page number 40. In this diagram, children, we have a special funnel. The structure is made up of glass. We call it as a thistle funnel. Now in this solution, in this thistle funnel, we have taken a sugar solution, let's say concentrated sugar solution. And in the beaker outside is pure water. We have tied a cellophane paper. I told you cellophane paper is semi-permeable. Now semi-permeable membrane is dividing the concentrated solution from pure water. So what should happen, children? This is a stand holding it. What should happen? Just now imagine there is no piston over here. There's nothing over here. Only the two solutions and a semi-permeable membrane. In that case, what should happen is that water should move inside from higher to lesser area of water distribution. Because this is direct condition of osmosis. Enough water is more outside, less inside because it's highly concentrated. And through the cellophane, water starts entering into. So this level of water should rise. Alright. But imagine now we have placed a weight like a piston over here, like a metallic plate or a weight over here. We have kept it opposing the flow of water. Water trying to come up and we have just put some weight. So in that case, children, in spite of the difference of water molecules, right, water should have come up, but it will stop. So this pressure, which is just allowing the water molecules not to enter in spite of difference of gradient, right, is called as osmotic pressure. I'll read it again. You should be able to understand. Osmotic pressure is the minimum pressure. See, what pressure is the minimum pressure that must be exerted. We are exerting it over here to prevent the passage of pure solvent. That is to stop this pure solvent or water, right, into solution when the two are separated by the semi-permeable membrane. So you have to stop this passage. Who is stopping the passage? This pressure applied. This pressure is called as the osmotic pressure. Root pressure is the pressure developed into the roots due to inflow of water brought about due to alternate turgidity and flaccidity of the cells of the cortex and the root hair, which helps in pushing the plant sap upwards. So that I'll have to show you here. Root pressure is, see, this is a root. Continuously water is entering the root through the root hairs, right? Water is entering the root hair, then the epidermis, then the inner epidermis is single layered here. Then coming into the cortex, these cells are cortical cells. Then the endodermis, single layered box-like cells. Then the next layer is pericycle, and then the vascular bundle, that is phloem and xylem. So look at the journey of this water, children. And because it is continuously entering, so naturally there is some pressure developed. This is the same pressure which we call as the root pressure developed in the roots, right? Which is due to inflow of water coming in, right? Due to alternate turgidity and flaccidity of the cells of cortex. These cells of the cortex are sometimes becoming turgid and flaccid, and these are thus helping to push the plant sap upwards. First it is reaching here till the xylem and then will be lifted up. Alright, so this is all about the root pressure. Passive and active transport we have already done, children. Passive transport, I told you, no input of energy because there is free movement of molecules from their higher concentration to their lower concentration. Passive transport is nothing different from diffusion. What did I tell you, children? Passive transport, we are going to talk about movement of water molecules only. More water outside, less water inside, right? And there is no requirement of energy in this case. Coming to active transport is just the opposite, where the minerals are moving from the area of lesser concentration to the area of higher concentration. See, remember there are less minerals outside as comparatively to more minerals inside in the vacuoles. And this forcibly taking up of minerals from less to high through the SPM, that's called as active transport, which requires expenditure of energy in the form of ATP. Alright, so this is all for today, children. Here I am going to stop, and in my next video tomorrow we will start from tonicity as our next topic, and we will also discuss some experiments. So I am going to send you 5 clear pages of notes to write, children. Number 1, then this is the second, the third, the fourth page, and the half page over here. So 4.5 pages, children, should be very clearly written and understood from the textbook. I am taking this second time, remember, because the video was not clearly uploaded. So I have taken it in your advantage only. Take the help from the textbook. Ask any queries, whatever you have. Next time, that's tomorrow, we'll move further with this. Thank you.